Okay, so for today's topic, self-acceptance, like what does that actually mean? Does the idea of it in itself feel like it's never going to happen, like you can't really achieve that? And are you really looking to just be okay with your body? And this one is a huge one. This topic is super important. Because it usually is the first thing that comes into play when you do have a type of disordered eating disorder, anything. Like, you are often quite very critical of yourself and can have like a negative perception of yourself. And once you can achieve food freedom, usually this is going to be also the last thing to go, because it is one of the hardest things to actually accept and change, so to speak. So I really want to dive into sort of what exactly self-acceptance is, how, or more or less like why is it super important, and how can you achieve it. If you are struggling with this and you're like, I don't know what to do, like this is going to be the video for you. So to start, like, what is self-acceptance? And self-acceptance is really, acknowledging where you are without judgment, like without any judgment, right? Because we often have the judgment component to it, right? Because you want to be able to see things sort of in the moment without having that self-critical voice or that critiquing voice going on at the same time. So usually when I hear, people in the group or my clients as well say, oh, I accept myself, I'm okay with myself. But there's usually like a but after that, like I accept myself, or if too. If I eat this certain way, or if I only have this amount of calories per day, or if I exercise this amount of time per day, or how many times per week, or if I'm this certain weight, or if I'm this certain size, right? There's usually something else that has to go with it, and there really isn't, that overall general okay and acceptance about it, because there's some limitations with it as well. So I really want to have that self-acceptance component coming at you in the sense that you understand that it's without judgment, without stipulations, and it really just is for you to be able to do that, all right? And then you have body respect, and that one can be confusing, because some people are like, oh, I respect my body, and then I hear the things that they do, and then I'm like, no, you don't. Like, if you did, you wouldn't be doing some of that stuff. But the thing with body acceptance is that you don't have to love what you see in the mirror, you don't have to like what you see in the mirror, but you still need to be able to show yourself compassion and respect without worrying about how it looks on the other end. Oh, hey, Allie. Thanks for joining. So happy that you're here. But yeah, body respect in itself is something that you actually have to show yourself some kindness and compassion to, and stop shaming yourself from what is sort of staring back at you in the mirror. All right, so to go into that, like, this question that I'm going to be asking can usually be met with resistance, can usually be met with being very defensive, like your walls are probably going to come up when I ask this question, because I did. Like, my walls would come up as well. I would get very defensive if someone were to sort of throw this in my face. But the question is, like, how well is not liking yourself working for you? Like, how well has that been working for you? And usually that brings resistance, because no one wants to see that. Like, no one wants to have to deal with some of these feelings that come up when I ask this question, because no one wants to really have to do the hard work to get to the change that they're seeking. And usually they think that things are working just fine, right? Like, maybe you lost the weight that you wanted to do, and maybe you're in the ideal or pant size that you're hoping for, but then what other areas are lacking in your life? So when I ask, like, how well is not liking yourself going so far, like, it's probably not going that well, because, oh, sorry, hey Ellie, I have a random question. Let's see if I can do this on this one. Where is the line between calorie restriction and an eating disorder? That's a good question. If you don't Oh, I can totally answer the question. There really isn't like a fine line, so to speak, because there are so many eating disorders out there that you do have one, but it's sort of undiagnosed because people have these certain standards. And really the standard is because of how you're eating or what you feel like you should be eating, like, is it affecting your quality of life? Are you missing out on things in life? And for a calorie restriction, in a sense, that is, because for you to have to like really think about it, why are you in a calorie restriction? Why do you want to restrict calories? Is it because you want to lose weight? Why do you want to lose weight? Do you not like how you look as a, like, view yourself as a person? Like, there's so many things that go behind it that it's, you know, it can be simple to just say, well, I'm in a calorie deficit or calorie restriction. That's obviously an eating disorder, right? Like, but there's so many people that think and just view from the outward in terms of like what you look like from the outside, that say, oh yeah, I have an eating disorder, and then people respond back to it being like, no you don't look like you have an eating disorder, you're not too skinny, you look like a normal weight, or things like that, right? And everyone has our own opinions and stuff behind it, but if you're finding that it is affecting your quality of life, you're obsessing about food, you have to do something a certain way, things have to be really, really strict for you, and you are trying to change you as a person both physically and mentally, then yes, they both are there in that same sort of mentality. But let's see, you said, I have a number in my head that if I reach, I freak out, but it doesn't necessarily run my life, but psychology, if I get near that number, I'm like, oh my God, time to cut back. Yeah, no, I wouldn't say like you'd have like, because I don't know that much about in terms of what's going on with you, but if you get to that point where you're like, I have to get, and you get to this certain number, I would really challenge you to go into the why. Why, like, what about that number is going to freak you out? Why do you feel like when you get to that point, you have to cut back? Like, what's the end case? What about that is going to actually define you as a person? And why are you not okay with what happens right now? That's what I would challenge you to sort of think about, right? Because I was like that too, and I would constantly be monitoring my weight and seeing and judging how I was going to, you know, be that day based on my weight. And if I was up like 0.2, like, I would be screwed. I'd be pissed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just went up, right? Like, but we always have that, like, and that can be in many different areas. So for you, it might turn out to be that you're noticing that with food, but you're probably going to notice it in other areas where you get to a certain point and you're like, holy shit, like, I need to cut back or I need to do something about it. But we often just see it with food because we can control it, and it's an easy way to sort of hone in when other things maybe in your life are feeling a little bit chaotic, so to speak. So I would have you explore what else is going on that maybe really isn't the food, but something else as well. Oh, thanks, Allie. Good, I hope that helps. But yeah, keep asking questions if more things are popping up during this video as well. So going back to that question I was talking about was, how well is not liking yourself going so far, right? And we really want to have you change the attitude that you have so it works with you and not against you, right? Because oftentimes, if you're going to be consumed with all of sort of these negative thoughts about yourself, about your body and things like that, do you really expect the things happening in your life to be positive, right? Like, it's really, really challenging to do that when you're constantly going to be overwhelmed with a lot of negativity that's going on in there. So a lot of times I get the whole, you know, I'll like my body when, or if I only look like, or if I only, like for you, Allie, reach a certain weight, then, right? Like, I challenge you, like, that's not working for you. That really takes you out of what's happening right now and understanding you at this moment. And many times, you know, like diets and stuff like that want you to change your appearance, like you're trying to change something instead of accepting what is. And it is challenging. I'm not going to say this stuff is easy by any means, but it really, this is a huge one. And once I seriously finally grasped this and was able to do this, like, everything else in my life got so much easier because, like I said, this is usually the first thing to come up, but also the last, literally one of the last things to go when you really are trying to find that food freedom and true self and body acceptance. This is a hard one because we've constantly been telling ourselves something different for a very, very long time. And a lot of times, I don't know if this will be holding true for you, Allie, but weight is often then usually a visual representation of failure, right? Because we can obviously see it, we can control it, and we use it as a gauge. And a lot of times then if our weight is a visual representation of failure, then ourselves as a person, you know, our bodies and stuff also is going to be that visual representation of something. It doesn't always have to mean failure, but when you say get to a certain amount, a weight or a pant size or things like that, right? You have like this, oh my gosh, I'm so proud, I got this, right? Like, it's like you won something, but what did you win? Really? Because it shouldn't have anything to do with that, but we do usually associate with weight with the visual representation of failure for some reason. And it's really unnecessary and it's totally untrue because you are totally cool with how you are right exactly at this moment. Like, you've been enough this entire time. So I really want to have you think about that question, like, how well is not liking you, how well has not liking yourself working for you so far? And it probably hasn't been working that great, right? Which brings me into the next thing. Oh, this one's a toughie, but you really got to learn to try and silence your inner critique. This one's challenging. This one is challenging because oftentimes we don't even realize how mean we are to ourselves. Like, at all. We really don't acknowledge it because it's pretty much set to default at this point. And it's just what comes up. So if it's always going to be negative, it's really hard to recognize it. So I want to bring up a point when I ask my clients to really focus on the feelings that are going around this. And a lot of times I do get the, I feel so fat. My thighs are so disgusting. My stomach, you know, sticks out. My butt is so huge. I feel huge. Like, right? When you associate or have that sentence of I feel so fat or I feel huge, I do want to point out that's not a feeling. Like, that is not at all a feeling. It is a sentence you just created about yourself, right? Because feelings are going to be something that usually is going to be like a lonely, sad, frustrated, unhappy, overwhelmed, upset, angry, disappointed. Because oftentimes when I ask my clients and other people these questions to really hone in on that, it's because you don't want to have to think about these things, because usually it's difficult. Like, it's a deflective manner to not get uncomfortable with the feelings, because usually the feelings themselves are uncomfortable. So what do? We easily try to put a sentence to it that really is deflecting and avoiding the actual feeling at hand that really has nothing probably to do with the physical appearance of our body or food, and it has everything to do with how we view ourselves. But no one wants to have to do that. No one wants to do the work. No one wants to look inside there because it's hard and you have to be vulnerable to do it. And it's scary. It really, really is. All right, let's see what you said here, Allie. It's like, if I don't look athletic enough, I feel weird about my body. Does that make sense? Yeah, no, I totally get that. I was always the tomboy growing up, and I felt like I didn't even look like a girl till I was a senior in high school at all. And I totally get that. And the thing is, when you feel like you have to look a certain way, think like, what about that defines you? Why do you associate being athletic with something? Like, you're associating with something, and it's probably how you define yourself and things like that, because that's what you've been used to, and that's sort of in sort of that control mechanism, that's sort of the routine that you have, the structure that you have, and anything outside from it is challenging, and you don't know how to interpret it, right? So I would hone in on where is that really stemming from. And a lot of things that you're asking are really going to go right back to the why. Why is this so important to you? What about the athletic appeal makes and feel that defines you as you, right? But it's challenging. So I would journal on that and really hone in on what about that sort of defines you and why you feel like you need to have that persona or that look. All right, but when I talk about silencing that inner critique, it really starts with recognizing the negative self-talk, right? This one is huge, and I did a video about that, and I can put it in the link too, about the negative self-talk and how to do it. But the first step in any of that is going to actually be acknowledging it. So one thing I do like to have my clients do is for one day, write down everything negative that comes to mind about you. Literally everything. And it doesn't matter how little it is, it doesn't matter how long it is, but for one day, literally write down everything that you're telling yourself, all the negative stuff. And you might surprise yourself as to how much negativity you actually say about yourself. When I did this, I had like 2 sheets, I had like 2 pages of just shit that I was telling myself. And then the ironic thing is, we expect that somehow something positive is going to happen that day, when it isn't, because it would be so hard to have that happen when you only have negativity consuming your thoughts. Like, that is just unrealistic. So I really want you to be able to spend one day, write that stuff down, because then you'll be able to see your tendencies, see your patterns, and understand what is going on in your mind. And once you write it down and you see it, you can see like, holy crap, man, you'll see all the stuff that you're telling yourself. And once you do that, then you have an understanding as to where is this coming from, right? But a lot of times we don't maybe necessarily want to look at the negative or get into those feelings because it makes us vulnerable, and that is very, very scary, right? Because what if we don't like it? What if when we notice what we're saying about ourselves, we don't actually like what we're doing? Which that means we're probably going to want to change it, but the change in itself is super scary, right? Because then you have to let go of this. Then you have to do something else, and then you aren't going to be stuck in your comfort zone or your safety zone, even though it's sort of that love-hate relationship, right? But I really, really recommend for one day writing all this stuff down, because once you understand where the negativity is from, then you can actually have the opportunity to change it, right? But one thing I do want to point out, when you start to notice where these negative thoughts come into play and say, like, you're telling yourself, like, I feel fat, I really hate myself, is very unrealistic and not believable whatsoever to go from I hate myself to I love myself. That's very, very hard to do, mainly because you're not going to believe it, right? If you've been telling yourself you hate yourself or you're fat, and then you go to, oh, I love myself, I'm beautiful, like, you just skipped a massive amount of stuff right there that is very hard to believe, right? You've gone from one end to the next. So what I do want you guys to do is focus on going from, like, in little steps, right? If you try to make this leap, you're bound to not make that leap. You got to do these little small steps that build the confidence so that you know and can actually trust the fact that you're doing the right thing. So you want to go from something really negative to less negative, to even less negative, to neutral, and then to slightly positive, and then more positive and more positive, right? Like, because then along the way you'll actually start to believe it, right? But if you keep doing the big leaps, that's just a form of self-sabotage, because you know you're not going to believe it. And if you're not going to believe it, it's not going to actually happen, and then you're just going to easily put yourself down and be like, no, I can't do this. This stuff's not for me, right? So help yourself out, man. Do this stuff in small steps. So you can easily have a more neutral thought, so to speak, of my body is capable. My body is healthy. My body is functioning, right? Like, whatever works for you, but make it believable in a sense, or else you will not, it won't work. It really won't, because you will be like, no, I don't believe that. That feels fake. That doesn't feel real. Like, it's not working. So when you do want to start and change these thoughts, you really want to start small and make them so you actually believe them. right? Which goes into also exploring what this actually means to you and really asking yourself these hard questions when it comes to self-acceptance. And this is also one that I get a lot of resistance on because it's going to be hard and you potentially might not agree with what's going on, and you might have called yourself a liar during this because you've realized that you've been telling yourself lies the entire time, which you have. And it can be tricky. So I really want you to use these questions to explore really what's going on, and then taking action at a more internal place, right? Because we are often taking action to have a visual sort of result, so to speak, right? Like we want to have lost weight, we want to eat healthier, so we're visually seeing healthy foods, or maybe not healthy foods, or you want to maybe change your hair or change your clothes or change some type of physical appearance, and then you'll get to there and you'll be like, I sort of still feel like shit about myself for some reason, right? Like you just did an outward thing, but you had no idea, you didn't change any of that internal factor. And if you don't change that internal factor, nothing you do on the outside is going to make a difference because it's still stemming from the same thing. All right, so some of these questions that I really want you to think about are hard. They really are. But they really, really help you like do this. And just trying to change the outside, like I said, isn't really addressing the real issue. So one thing that I see often come up in the group and with clients and things like that are when like, how many times have you lost the weight but you're still not satisfied, right? Like how many times have you lost weight and then you've gained it back, and then you're so fearful of the food that you eat, and everyone is deathly afraid of carbs and fats and all that fun jazz. So then they go into like, oh my gosh, I just ate carbs tonight, and then you weigh yourself the next day, like, holy shit, I just went up 5 pounds. And then I want to bring you back to reality here for a second, because I am not here to beat around the bush. I am here to help you. And I do want to point out that that just can't actually realistically happen, right? Because if you want to look at it in a mathematical way or in that type of manner, 1 pound is 3,500 calories. That's a decent amount of calories. If you say that you gain 5 pounds overnight by eating one carbohydrate meal, in a sense that you just ate 17,500 calories worth of whatever you just ate in one night. That can't happen. That can't happen, right? But this is what, and I completely understand where you're coming from, because no one could ever reason with me at all. With my own opinions, with any of this, no one could realistically give me facts that I'd actually agree with, because it didn't feel right to me, because it went against what I thought I needed and should do. But I do want to point out that you're missing the point if you go straight to that, because it really had nothing to do with that. It really didn't. So I really want you to focus on some of these questions. So one of them is really where is the idea of your perfect body coming from, right? Where is it coming from? And what does that perfect body mean to you? Now, when I say perfect body, that can be anything. And for you, Allie, that could be the athletic looking type. Some people want the curves, some people don't want the curves, right? Like there's a perfect body, there's going to be something in your mind, that image that you're striving for, that you feel like once you reach that, the end all, you're going to be happy, you're going to like yourself, you're going to accept yourself, you won't have any worry in the world, you'll be able to do whatever you want, life will be grand. Where is that idea coming from? Now, is that coming from maybe your parents told you this, some other family members, you heard it from friends at school when you were younger, you saw it on social media, you saw it on TV, like where is this perception coming from, this ideal image that you're trying to get to, right? And what does that look like for you? This is a huge question, because there's a reason why you're doing all of this shit to yourself. right? You're trying to get to something. And I really want you to think about that. What are you actually trying to get to? And what does that mean to you? All right. And second question here, when you're doing all that, what are you putting off then until you actually get to that perfect image or that perfect body or that perfect weight or that perfect size, right? What are you putting off in life to do until you reach that point, right? Are you maybe not exercising much? If you like hiking, maybe you're not hiking. Maybe you're not buying that perfect black dress that you want or a perfect outfit. Maybe you aren't going to treat yourself at massages because you are very self-conscious and you aren't at the weight that you deem is acceptable to do that. Maybe you aren't dating. Maybe you aren't meeting new people, right? Like, what are you holding out on? What are you not allowing yourself to do because in your mind you haven't reached that point, right? And what does that mean to you that you are putting yourself on hold for all of this, right? Like, what does that mean to you that you are holding out on life because of it? And what would it actually look like and mean to you if you started to actually do those things now? Like, what would that mean to you? I'm gonna let you think about that as I answer a question. Let's see, what do you have? I don't know what I have. I don't know that I have a perfect body. I just know that I don't and have never liked my body. So I am going to reclarify something. There is never a perfect body. And for me to ask that question is sort of an ironic way of asking it because it's something unachievable in hindsight, right? You're never going to get something perfect. Nothing is perfect. You are going to be imperfect because that is how it works, right? Like, I have a tattoo that literally says perfectly flawed because it's true. There is no perfect thing. So, Trisha, you are correct. You don't have the perfect body, but what you do have is your body that was given to you at birth, right? And a lot of times, if you do know that you have never liked your body, it is going to stem from how you just view you. Our body is a representation of us, right? It's not just the body itself that we don't like, it's a whole package at that point. So you really want to go in and feel like, well, what do I not like about myself? What do I not actually enjoy about myself? What do I wish I was different at, right? Like, it's going to stem from you. The body is just a representation of that. Oh, thank you, Allie. I always love when you do the unicorn emoji. That one's a fun one. But yeah, so when I ask about what is your idea of a perfect body, in hindsight, like that, you're never going to achieve it, but obviously you're putting your body through the ringer to try and get to something that obviously is unachievable. But what does that mean to you? And then, like I said, what are you holding out on? Like, what does it actually mean if you actually allowed yourself to do the things that you want to do now instead of waiting until you achieve something that's unachievable, right? Can you see how this is only going to set yourself up to be disappointed, all right? And with those questions and focusing on the now, what are some feel-good things that you can actually do for you today, right? Not tomorrow, not the next day, but have a list of stuff that you can actually do today. And that could be, going for a walk, going to go get a massage, getting a manicure, having a bubble bath, right? Like, whatever that, self-care thing that you can do, the comfort things that you can do, the things that you actually want to do, and you're always like, oh, but only if I could only get to this, or maybe when my body's like this, I can do that, or only if I look like this, I could do that. Get rid of that front part and be like, what can I do today? All right, because when you start to really nurture your body, when you start to really show yourself compassion and kindness to your body now, that's when you can really start to begin feeling comfortable with you, right? But if you keep putting it off, if you keep waiting, that shit's never gonna happen, right? Like, you're never going to get that comfort because you are trying to achieve something that is unachievable. Because you are the one in control in all of this, right? you will always put yourself below when you've actually made it anyways. So I really want you to think about that kind of a thing. And out of all of this, from anything that I just said today, if you can listen to one thing, that is going to be that you have always been enough. Always you have been enough. Right? Always. It's always been there. You've always been there. It's just you thought you weren't. From something that happened, and then that little seed got planted and it started to grow. And when that thing kept growing, you were putting down a path that was only down that negative path. But guess what? You get to plant another little seed, and you get to let that seed grow, and that seed's going to be more of a positivity mindset, right? Of self-acceptance and body respect, and knowing that you got this. Like, you can do this, most definitely. And I just want you to start showing yourself that today. All right? I don't want you to have to wait. I don't want you to have to think that you have to achieve something in order to actually show yourself some kindness and love and compassion and acceptance, because you don't have to wait. You can literally start this today. All right? So let's recap a little bit on what we've talked about today. And like I said, man, self-acceptance is a toughie. Like, this one's a toughie. Do not please expect this stuff to happen overnight. Think, and I try to always remind people in the group and my clients too, like, this took time. Where you're at right now did not happen overnight. So to expect that things are going to happen overnight, or even in a week or 2 weeks or anything like that, like, that's just a joke. Like, you are just setting yourself up to get pissed and disappointed, when instead, as long as you're acknowledging that you're doing something every day, that's progress, right? Progress over perfection. This isn't meant to be perfect. So the self-acceptance thing takes some time, but it is super, super important. And the one thing that I can say about that self-acceptance, as we're recapping, is that you need to acknowledge where you are without judgment. No judgment. All right? There cannot be like limitations set for yourself. You cannot have these strict rules about what you have to do and be in order to to accept yourself in any of this, right? You just can't do that. It doesn't work that way. So you have to be able to see yourself without judgment and really hone away from a lot of the critical views that you have and those voices that you have about yourself, right? And that body respect component of it is that you don't have to like what you see. You don't even have to love what you see in the mirror, but you do have to be more compassionate and still respectful without having to focus on the looks component to it. All right, so like I said, the first question and thing that I always bring up with people that usually is hit with resistance, and I also was hitting this with resistance in the beginning too, is, how well has not liking yourself been going for you so far? Right? It's not going well. It really, really isn't, because you can't expect to have negativity meet with positivity in anything. Negative equals negative in any of this. It really does. So I really want you to really stop in the sense of telling yourself, I'll like my body when, or if I only looked like this, or if I only got to a certain weight, or if I only got to a certain size, right? If I only ate this. Dude, stop that. Stop it, because that's not helping. All right, but I really want you to understand that oftentimes we do see that weight is a visual representation of failure, usually, right? We failed because we couldn't get to this weight, or we failed because we did get to this weight, right? Like, that's often what we see, but it really is not true whatsoever, all right? And then I really want you to focus on silencing your inner critique. And that is going to really stem from acknowledging those negative thoughts. And like I said, the one thing that you can do one day is going to write down all of the negative thoughts that you have about yourself. Write it all down. I don't care how long it is. It could be 2 pages, 3 pages, whatever. write that shit down, and then look over it and see where you have patterns and tendencies and similarities with all of this stuff. Because once you can recognize and see what it is, then you have the opportunity to change it, right? And when it's happening, that's when you can change it. So I want you to also make sure that you remember to start small. Start with a neutral thought about yourself, instead of trying to go from I hate myself to I love myself, because those are very two ends of the spectrum, and it's very hard to actually confidently get to that point when you just keep trying to make these massive leaps instead of going small steps that help build the confidence, that help, tame that self-doubt and build that trust factor with yourself again until you get to that point. So have neutral comments about yourself so you actually believe them, because that's when they are going to stick. And over time, that will be your default thought instead of the negative. You're going to have a positive in the end, and that's awesome. All right. And also, you're gonna have to ask yourself hard questions. You're gonna have to get vulnerable with yourself. You're gonna have to dig deep. You're gonna have to really understand you from the inside out with all of this. So one of these main questions, like I said, is where's the idea of this perfect body coming from, right? And when I say perfect, I don't mean actual perfect, because there is no such thing as perfect, but obviously you have this ideal image in your mind that you're trying to achieve, and you keep not getting there. And what does that perfect, body mean to you in all of this? So I really want you to, understand that component of it. And then also know what it's like to put off a lot of things that you want to do in life because you haven't achieved that. And what would it actually look like if you said, well, F you to that, I'm just gonna do this stuff now. Because you, by all means, deserve to just do this stuff right now. All right? And then in the end, what can you actually do, feel good things that you can actually do right now for yourself, right? Because once you start to have this on a daily basis, once you start to do this routinely and consistently, it's going to feel way more comfortable, and you will actually begin to feel comfortable about yourself and about you and about your body, right? But it takes practice and it takes hard work. All right. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, if there's things that you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense, let me know, all right, in the comments. If you're in my group, feel free to make sure, if you want to say private, comment in the group, and then I can answer those questions in there. But yeah, like self-acceptance, man, this one's a toughie. It is a toughie, but it is completely doable. Like, you can do this. And I say that because I did it, and I had no self-acceptance whatsoever. I didn't even know what that meant for over 15 years, because I did not like myself since I was a young girl. I didn't have anything in terms of a positive definition of myself for a long time, and now I do, and I know what to do to get there, and I understand that it's gonna be challenging, but you most definitely can do it. You definitely can. So, if you're finding that this is tricky, this is hard, that you've done so many different ways and that's not working, and you feel like you need some more one-on-one support, reach out to me. That is what I'm here for, all right? Because you are never meant to do this alone. It's very, very hard and almost near impossible to do alone. You need some support, you need some guidance, you need inspiration, you need someone in your corner cheering you on when you doubt yourself in any of this. So please reach out to me. I will put, my calendar in the comments as well. And we'll go from there, because you can schedule that free consultation with me and see if working together is going to be helpful for you or not. All right? It's Friday. I'm excited. I will say that my voice goes when I have to talk this. I don't even know how long this has been going, but if I start, this one's a long one. I do, apologize for that. But like I said, these were the free Friday trainings, and these were going to be a way more in-depth training. So they are going to take longer. because I'm going to go more in depth into this information than I was previously, because I really want you guys to succeed in this, and I want you to find food freedom and self-acceptance along the way. Okay? Enjoy your Friday, and until next time, adios.